The smell of fried oil and bleach hung heavy in the air. Lunch trays clattered. Laughter rang sharp as broken glass. At the far corner of the cafeteria, under the harsh glare of fluorescent lights, Naomi Carter sat alone. She had planned this first day carefully. New blouse, clean slate, steady breath. Yet Milbourne Secondary was louder, rougher, colder than she had imagined. Students swarmed around tables like tides in a storm, their noise a constant surge. Naomi kept her eyes on the lukewarm soup before her, pretending not to notice the stares. Her job here, guidance instructor for emotional resilience, was supposed to help calm the school's chaos. But peace was not welcome where fear ruled. A shadow stretched across her tray. "Hey, new lady." The voice carried a mock sweetness. She looked up. Derek Vale stood over her. Tall, golden-haired, varsity jacket draped open like armor. Two friends flanked him, Reed, wiry and twitchy, and Miles, broad, eyes gleaming with mischief. They grinned as if greeting prey. Naomi's fingers tightened around her plastic fork. "What can I do for you?" she asked softly. "You can start by learning the rules," Derek said. "No one sits here without our say." Laughter rippled from nearby tables. Phones tilted upward. Naomi felt every gaze pierce her like cold needles. She stood slowly, shoulders square. "Then I'll find another seat." Reed stepped closer, holding a tray piled high with fries. "You forgot dessert." The tray tipped. Oil and ketchup cascaded across her blouse. Gasps. Then laughter. Loud, gleeful, merciless. Naomi froze. The cafeteria spun, colors blurring, the sting of vinegar in her nostrils. Her throat tightened, but she refused to bend. Miles reached out, fingers hooking the edge of her cardigan. A sudden yank, fabric tore, loud, jagged, final. A hush swept through the room. The tear wasn't just cloth, it was a wound. Public, deliberate. For a heartbeat, Naomi said nothing. Then she breathed in, slow and deep. Her eyes lifted, calm and piercing. With one motion, she seized Miles's wrist. A twist, precise, controlled. He stumbled forward, crashing onto the tiles. A stunned gasp spread through the crowd. Reed lunged next. Naomi sidestepped, redirected his arm and sent him tumbling into a table. The clatter echoed like thunder. Derek's grin faltered. He stepped in, rage flashing behind his eyes. Naomi faced him squarely, voice steady. "I didn't come here to fight, but I won't be broken." The silence deepened. Only the buzz of lights and the faint hum of vents filled the air. Then, from the corner, a slow clap. A small boy, glasses crooked on his face, began to applaud. Beside him, a shy girl followed. Soon the sound grew, hands striking in rhythm, courage rising in echoes. Derek stood rigid, breath heaving. His pride, once towering, cracked under the weight of the crowd's shift. He forced a smirk, masking fury. "This isn't over," he muttered, backing away. Naomi didn't answer. She straightened, smoothing the torn edge of her cardigan, the red stains on her sleeve. The applause faded into whispers. When the bell rang, the cafeteria emptied in a rush. Footsteps echoed down corridors, carrying rumors like wildfire. Naomi lingered, gathering her tray with trembling hands. She stared at her reflection in the metal counter. Ketchup splattered like blood, eyes still bright. A soft voice came from behind. "Miss Carter." "You were brave." The girl with shy eyes, Leah Tran, stood clutching a half-eaten sandwich. Beside her, the boy adjusted his glasses nervously. "I'm Finn," he murmured. "Nobody ever stands up to them." Naomi managed a small smile. "Then maybe it's time someone did." Leah nodded, voice shaking. You made us feel safe. Naomi looked around the empty room. The overturned chairs, the puddle of spilled soda reflecting harsh light. Safety. The word felt fragile here, but in Leah's eyes, it gleamed like a promise. She touched the torn seam at her shoulder. The sting of humiliation pulsed beneath her skin, yet something else burned deeper. Resolve. The lesson she had come to teach might have to begin with herself. As she left the cafeteria, whispers followed her down the hall. She flipped them. She fought back. She's not like the others. Outside, the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the cracked pavement. The autumn wind tugged at her hair, cool and sharp, carrying the faint rustle of leaves across the courtyard. She walked steadily, each step echoing with quiet defiance. Behind her, in a corner by the vending machines, Derek watched. His jaw tightened. A phone screen glowed in his palm, a message already half-typed. She's dead meat. He sent it. Naomi didn't see him, but she felt the chill crawl down her spine. The battle had begun, not of fists, but of whispers, cameras, and lies. Still, as she reached her small office at the end of the corridor, she paused by the window. The sky above Milbourne was streaked with fading gold, clouds drifting like slow-moving scars. For the first time since arriving, she allowed herself to breathe. She peeled off the ruined cardigan and laid it across her chair. A tear, a stain, a mark, but also a sign. Her phone buzzed, an email from the principal's office. Subject line bold, incident report, cafeteria disturbance. She exhaled slowly, eyes narrowing. The fight for truth had already begun. Beyond the glass, students crossed the courtyard, their laughter distant, untamed. Naomi watched them go, her reflection merging with the gray sky. Invisible to some, unforgettable to others. In the silence, a question stirred, not of fear, but of purpose. How do you teach respect in a place built on pride? Her hand brushed the torn seam again. The fabric was soft, fragile, but it had not unraveled. Neither would she. Somewhere deep within, beneath the ache of humiliation, a quiet ember glowed. Tomorrow, she promised herself, she would return, not as a victim, but as a mirror. And in that reflection, every hidden truth would surface. By morning, the story had already spread like wildfire. In every hallway of Milbourne Secondary, whispers followed Naomi Carter wherever she walked. Some voices carried awe, others suspicion. All eyes turned when she passed. She kept her steps steady, her expression calm. But inside, a storm churned. She had come here to teach resilience, to guide students toward courage. Instead, her first lesson had become a spectacle. As she reached her classroom, she paused. The door was covered in sticky notes. Some said, "You're a hero." Others sneered, "Violent witch, go home." She peeled one from the wood. Her fingers trembled before she tucked it into her pocket like evidence. Inside, desks scraped. Murmurs buzzed. Derek Vale sat at the back, arms folded, eyes hard. Reed and Miles flanked him, nursing bruised pride. Leah and Finn sat near the front, quiet but alert, glancing toward Naomi with hesitant trust. The bell rang. Silence fell. Naomi set her books on the desk and spoke softly. "Today, we'll talk about choices." Her voice echoed faintly against the whiteboard. Every action begins with one. No one moved. Even Derek stayed still, jaw clenched, waiting for weakness. Naomi continued, "Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what's right in its shadow." For a brief moment, the room felt still, balanced between tension and understanding. Then Reed coughed a laugh. So, what's right, Miss Carter? Throwing people on the floor? A ripple of snickers spread. Naomi met his gaze, steady. I defended myself, and I'll defend anyone who's harmed here. Leah's hand lifted, shy but firm. Miss Carter, what if someone keeps hurting others because they think no one can stop them? Naomi's eyes softened. Then the silence must break. Derek's chair screeched back as he stood. Careful, he said quietly. Words like that can start wars. His voice was calm, but the threat beneath it coiled tight. Naomi stepped closer, not flinching. Maybe it's time for one. The class held its breath. Then Derek smirked, brushing invisible dust from his sleeve. We'll see how long you last. He sat down again, lips curled in a cold smile. Naomi turned back to the board. Her hand shook slightly as she picked up the chalk, but her voice stayed firm. We'll keep learning, because knowledge is armor, and silence, that's surrender. The lesson continued, tense but unbroken. After class, Leah lingered at her desk. Miss Carter, she whispered, I heard they're planning something. After school. Naomi knelt beside her. Who told you? Someone in Derek's group. They said they're going to prove you're dangerous. Naomi's stomach tightened. Did they say how? Leah shook her head. Only that they'll record it. Naomi rose slowly. The plan was clear. Provoke her, film her, twist the truth. She'd seen it before. In another district, another life. Rumor could destroy faster than fact. She thanked Leah and walked down the empty hallway. Posters fluttered on the walls. Anti-bullying slogans faded with neglect. The air smelled of dust and faint disinfectant. Her reflection glided alongside her in the glass panes. Tired eyes, steady stride. At the office, Mr. Camden, the vice principal, called her in. He was a thin man with a voice like paper, crisp, cautious. Miss Carter, he said, folding his hands, there's been a situation. I'm aware, Naomi replied quietly. Camden sighed. Parents are divided. Some say you're a hero. Others claim you assaulted students. The board is watching closely. Naomi met his gaze. Do you believe I crossed a line? He hesitated. I believe this school has forgotten what a line is. His answer hung heavy in the air. Keep your composure, he added softly. Truth moves slowly here. Outside, the clouds thickened, gray swallowing blue. By the time the last bell rang, the corridors thinned to silence. Naomi gathered her things, ready to leave. But near the stairwell, a flicker caught her eye. A phone lens, barely visible behind a locker's edge. She turned. Derek stepped out, hands raised in mock surrender. Just documenting, he said, smirking. Transparency, right? Behind him, Reed lifted another phone. Miles leaned against the wall, laughter simmering. The trap had sprung. Naomi steadied her breath. What do you want? To show everyone who you really are, Derek said. His voice echoed, smooth and venomous. Lose your temper again. Prove us right. She stood still, pulse hammering. Her instincts screamed to walk away, but retreat meant silence, and silence was the weapon they counted on. Instead, she took a slow step forward, voice calm. You think truth is a game? Then let's play. She reached into her bag and pulled out her own phone, holding it up between them. Now we both record. Derek blinked, caught off guard. Naomi's voice rose, clear and firm. Derek Vale, Reed Lane, Miles Corbin. You're attempting to provoke violence on camera. Is that correct? Reed's grin faltered. Miles shifted uneasily. Derek forced a laugh. You're paranoid. Naomi didn't lower her phone. "Walk away," she said softly. "This is your chance." For a long second, no one moved. Then Derek's jaw flexed. He turned sharply, motioning his friends to follow. The hallway swallowed their footsteps. Naomi stood alone again, her hand trembling as she stopped the recording. Her heart pounded, but her voice, steady, had held. Outside, rain began to fall, tapping against the windows like fingers drumming warnings. She slipped her phone into her bag, shoulders heavy yet lifted by a fragile pride. For now, she had avoided their snare, but the war wasn't over. It was shifting into shadows. As she stepped into the rain-soaked courtyard, Leah and Finn waited under the awning. "Are you okay?" Finn asked. "I will be," Naomi answered. Then she looked out across the darkening sky. Lightning flashed far off, brief and white. "Storm's coming," she murmured. "But storms clear the air." The three of them stood together, the first fragile thread of trust weaving between them. Behind a classroom window, Derek watched, eyes cold, unreadable. He lifted his phone, typing fast. A message blinked across the group chat. "Plan B tonight. Make her fall." Naomi couldn't hear it, but something in her chest tightened, a whisper of warning. The rain grew heavier, drumming like a countdown. In her pocket, the folded note, "Go home," pressed against her palm. She didn't throw it away. Instead, she whispered to the storm, "I'm not leaving." And in the shadows beyond the courtyard, unseen eyes watched, waiting for their next move. By dawn, the storm had cleared, leaving the town washed in cold light. But inside Millburn Secondary, the air was heavier than before, thick with rumor, sharpened by doubt. A single photo had begun to circulate overnight. Naomi Carter, cardigan torn, face tense, hand gripping a student's wrist. No context, no sound, only a headline written by an anonymous account. "Dangerous teacher unmasked." By first bell, it had spread through every group chat, reshared with sneers and emojis. Some believed it. Others whispered defense, but the damage was done. Naomi walked through the corridor like a ghost in daylight. Eyes followed her, some wide with awe, most narrowed with suspicion. Every whisper was a blade grazing the edge of her composure. Inside her classroom, the divide had grown. Half the students sat upright, attentive. The other half leaned back, phones hidden, smirks ready. Derek Vale sat in the back, silent but satisfied. His trap was working. Naomi placed her books on the desk, each motion deliberate, calm. "Today," she began, "we'll talk about truth." The word hung in the air like smoke. Reed scoffed under his breath. Guess she'd know how to twist it. Laughter rippled softly. Leah turned, glaring. "You don't know what really happened." Reed leaned forward. "Neither do you." Naomi raised a hand, silencing the exchange. Her voice stayed steady, though her pulse hammered. "Truth isn't what's loudest. It's what survives the noise." For a fleeting moment, quiet returned, fragile as glass. Then Derek spoke, smooth as oil. "So, if someone says you attacked them, we should just ignore it?" The class shifted uneasily. Phones lit beneath desks. The trap was tightening. Naomi stepped closer to the board, chalk in hand. "When people lie," she said, "it's not always to destroy. Sometimes it's to protect what they fear losing." Her gaze drifted toward Derek, but she didn't name him. Still, his jaw flexed, eyes darkening. Leah raised her hand timidly. "Miss Carter, what happens if the truth hurts everyone?" Naomi paused, the question catching her breath. She thought of her past, another school, another storm, the silence that had nearly ended her career. Then she answered softly, "Then it still deserves to be spoken." The bell broke the moment, sharp and final. Students gathered their things. Derek lingered, sliding a folded note across her desk. "Principal wants you. Urgent." He walked out before she could ask more. In the office, Mr. Camden waited, face drawn tight. On his desk lay a printed email, bold subject line, "Parental complaint, violent conduct." Naomi stood still as he spoke. "The board's investigating. They've requested a formal statement." She nodded slowly. "I'll give one." Camden hesitated. "Naomi, you need allies. This place, it feeds on perception." She met his eyes. "Then we'll show them what's real." Outside, clouds gathered again, heavy and gray. She returned to her classroom, but the whispers had already reached ahead of her. On her desk lay a fresh sheet of paper, crumpled, smeared in ink. It read, "Get out before you're erased." Her hand tightened around it. The letters bled into her palm. Fear pricked at the edge of her resolve, but she folded the note neatly and slipped it into her pocket. At lunch, Leah and Finn found her in the staff lounge, sitting by the window with a cup of untouched coffee. "Miss Carter," Finn said, breathless, "they've posted a new video." Naomi turned. This time the clip was spliced. Audio replaced, screams added. It looked as though she'd twisted Derek's arm in fury. Hundreds of comments already flooded below. "Fire her. She's dangerous. Who let her near kids?" Leah's eyes shimmered with tears. "This isn't fair." Naomi exhaled slowly. "No, it isn't. But truth doesn't need fairness to exist." Finn fidgeted with his phone. "I can trace the metadata, find the original source." "Do it," Naomi said, but quietly. Across the room, two teachers whispered by the vending machine. One shook her head. She should have kept her head down. The other muttered, "First week and already chaos." Their voices carried just enough to sting. Naomi rose, straightening her cardigan. "I won't vanish because of lies," she murmured. That evening, she sat in her small apartment, lamplight flickering across stacks of papers. Outside, sirens wailed faintly through the streets. Her laptop glowed with open tabs, policy codes, district regulations, her own drafted statement. But her thoughts drifted beyond words. She remembered the cafeteria, the laughter, the tier of fabric, the moment humiliation became defiance, the moment silence cracked. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Stop now, or the next video will end you." Attached was a blurred image, her walking alone at dusk, unaware. For a second, her hands shook. Then she steadied them against the desk. They were watching, but fear was a luxury she couldn't afford. She opened a new document. The title blinked across the screen. "Milburn Student Safety Reform, Proposal Draft 1. If they wanted her silence, they would get her voice instead." At midnight, rain began again, drumming steady against the window. Naomi stared out into the dark street, streetlights glowing in pools of gold. Every reflection in the glass looked different. Teacher, target, fighter. She no longer knew which was truest. But she knew one thing. She would not retreat. At the same hour, across town, Derek sat hunched over his desk, the glow of his monitor pale against his face. Beside him, Reed scrolled through comments, laughing nervously. "People are believing it. She's finished." Derek didn't laugh. He stared at the screen, jaw locked. But beneath the satisfaction, something twisted, an unease he couldn't name. He shut the laptop with a snap. "We're not done." The storm outside echoed his words. Morning brought a fragile calm. Naomi arrived early, her eyes heavy but unbroken. On her desk lay a single envelope, sealed with the school's crest. She tore it open. Subject: temporary suspension pending review. Effective immediately. Her breath caught. For a long moment the room blurred, walls tilting, air thinning. Then she folded the letter carefully, placed it on the desk, and straightened. Outside the door, Leah and Finn waited, eyes wide. Naomi managed a faint smile. "They think silence will end this," she said softly. "But truth is louder." She gathered her coat, pausing once at the threshold. Her classroom, once filled with voices, now stood still, desks empty, sunlight pooling across the floor. She whispered to the quiet, "I'll be back." As she stepped into the hallway, the echo of her footsteps mingled with the murmur of distant thunder. Above her, clouds thickened once more. The storm was far from over. Rain glazed the streets of Millbourne the morning after Naomi Carter's suspension. The sky hung low and heavy, pressing the town into silence. Inside her small apartment, Naomi sat at her desk, letter of suspension spread before her like a wound that refused to close. She traced the printed words with steady fingers. Effective immediately. No warning, no hearing. Just silence dressed as procedure. Her phone buzzed again. Messages flooding in from unknown numbers. Some kind, most cruel. One read, "Now you'll learn your place." Naomi leaned back, eyes closed. For a flicker, exhaustion pulled her under. But beneath it, something burned, stubborn and bright. A soft knock broke the stillness. When she opened the door, Leah Tran and Finn Ward stood shivering in the drizzle, clutching a folder. "We found something," Finn said. His voice trembled, not from cold but urgency. He spread the papers across her table. Screenshots, timestamps, metadata lines. The video that got you suspended, it's doctored, audio spliced, frames cut. Leah nodded, eyes wide. "We can prove it." Naomi stared at them, chest tightening with gratitude. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. Leah hesitated. "Because you fought for us when no one else would." Naomi's throat ached. "Then we'll fight together." Finn adjusted his glasses. "You'll need legal help, and someone who can get the truth out." Naomi thought for a moment, then reached for her phone. She scrolled through her contacts, stopping at a name she hadn't called in years. Mara Ellis, community lawyer, fierce and relentless. Within an hour, they met at the town library, the smell of old paper and rain clinging to the air. Mara sat across from Naomi, silver hair cropped short, eyes sharp as flint. "They've crossed a line," she said, after scanning the evidence. "Defamation, manipulation, institutional negligence. We'll file a preservation order. The school can't delete digital records." Beside her, Theo Grant, an independent journalist, adjusted his camera strap. "I'll publish the full story. Unedited footage, student testimonies, the system behind it all." Naomi listened, heart steadying. For the first time since the cafeteria, she didn't feel alone. But Mara leaned forward, voice low. "Understand this. When you challenge power, it fights back harder." Naomi nodded. "Then I'll stand harder." Outside, the rain eased to a mist. In another corner of town, Derek Vale sat in his father's study, the glow of the fireplace throwing shadows across his face. Thomas Vale, school board chairman, paced behind the desk, phone pressed to his ear. "I told them," Thomas hissed. "We can't afford scandal. She'll be discredited before the hearing." Derek swallowed. "Dad, maybe we went too far." Thomas spun, eyes sharp. "You think they'll pity you if she wins?" Everything I built collapses with one rumor. Derek looked down, guilt flickering like a dying flame. But his father's hand gripped his shoulder, heavy and cold. You'll finish what you started. That night, Naomi drafted her statement for the hearing. Her words were clear, stripped of anger, weighted with truth. I acted in self-defense. I upheld the dignity of my role. I will not apologize for protecting myself or my students. Mara reviewed it, nodding. Strong, honest. They'll try to twist it, but truth stands. Theo uploaded the first article before midnight. The real story behind Milbourne's viral video. Context matters. Within hours, it began to spread. In the school group chats, confusion rippled. Some students shared it quietly. Others deleted old posts. For the first time, doubt cracked through Derek's narrative. The next morning, Naomi walked to the library again, rain boots splashing through shallow puddles. She carried no books, only her laptop and a growing resolve. When she stepped inside, Theo greeted her with a faint smile. Your story's gaining traction, but someone's leaking new rumors, claims of misconduct in your past. Naomi's jaw tightened. Let them. Shadows vanish in light. Leah arrived moments later, clutching her phone. Miss Carter, someone posted photos, cropped ones, from your old school. They're making it look like you hugged students inappropriately. Naomi took the phone, staring at the grainy images. She remembered the moment, consoling a crying child after a funeral. Kindness turned to weapon. Mara's eyes darkened. We'll counter it, with full context, full witnesses. Naomi nodded. No lies will stand. By afternoon, Mara filed the motion, demanding the district preserve all evidence. Theo drafted the follow-up article. Fabrication and Fear, the campaign against a teacher. The narrative began to shift. But back at Milbourne Secondary, posters reappeared overnight. Unfit to teach, keep our kids safe, scrawled in black marker across Naomi's old classroom door. In the teacher's lounge, whispers grew harsher. She's bringing too much attention. She should have walked away. Only Mr. Camden stayed silent, watching the tide turn with weary eyes. That evening, Naomi stood in her apartment, staring at the torn cardigan hung on her wall. It was still stained faintly with ketchup, seams repaired by her own hands. A wound made whole again. She whispered to it like an oath, You will not define me. I will. Her phone buzzed. A new message, no name attached. Stop before it's too late. Tonight we prove who you really are. She stared at the screen, heart pounding once, twice, then steadying. Fear flickered, then faded into resolve. They're desperate, she murmured. That means they're losing. Outside, thunder rolled across the horizon. Lightning flashed over the rooftops, splitting the sky in pale fire. Naomi turned off the lamp, sat in the dark, and waited, mind calm, hands folded, heart unyielding. Somewhere across town, in a dimly lit gym, Derek typed furiously in the group chat. Plans set. Tonight. Lock the door. Get it on camera. His reflection wavered in the screen. Face pale, eyes hollow. For the first time, the thrill was gone. Only a growing weight pressed on his chest, whispering that the storm he'd summoned might soon drown them all. Back in her apartment, Naomi whispered to the silence, Truth is coming. I'll meet it. The clock struck midnight. The rain began again, and the battle shifted from rumor to reckoning. The night came heavy and electric, clouds stitched with lightning over Milbourne. Inside the old gymnasium, echoes of laughter and sneakers had faded. Now it stood nearly empty, lights humming faintly above worn wrestling mats. Naomi Carter stepped through the doorway, carrying a stack of safety manuals and a small bag of first aid supplies. It was her first meeting with the Confidence and Care Club, a small group she'd promised to lead after her suspension. Even stripped of her classroom, she refused to be silent. One by one, students arrived. Leah Tran clutching her notebook close. Finn Ward balancing a camera, cautious but eager. 5 others trailed behind. Faces Naomi had seen in the halls, quiet ones, shadows among noise. Tonight, they stepped forward. "Thank you for coming," Naomi said, her voice soft but clear. "This is a place for courage. Not fists, not fear." The group circled on the mats, hesitant smiles breaking the gloom. Naomi guided them through the first lesson, how to breathe under pressure, how to hold their ground without violence. Each move small, deliberate, steady. Laughter bubbled once, shy and bright, as Finn tripped and caught himself. For a moment, the room felt alive again, warm, safe. Then the lights flickered, once, twice, and went out. Darkness swallowed the gym. A sharp click followed, the sound of a lock turning from outside. Leah gasped. "Someone locked us in." Phones lit the room with small halos of blue. Shadows stretched across the walls. Then a voice drifted through the door, mocking, cold. "Welcome to rehearsal." Naomi moved fast. "Backs together, circle, stay calm." Footsteps shuffled beyond the door. A narrow window above the handle slid open. 2 faces peered in, Reed Lane and Miles Corbin, their flashlights cutting through the dark. Phones in hand, cameras rolling. Reed grinned. "We just want proof. Show us that temper." Miles laughed low. "Do something, teacher." Leah clutched Naomi's sleeve. "They're trying to film you." Naomi's voice cut through the fear, steady and strong. No one moves. No one reacts. But Reed pushed the door's gap wider and reached in, fingers snatching toward Leah's arm. Without thought, Naomi pivoted, grasping his wrist, twisting gently, guiding it away from the girl. A cry slipped from Reed as his phone clattered to the floor. Miles cursed, lunging to film. Finn stepped forward, surprising himself, knocking the phone from Miles's hand. It slid across the floor into darkness. The gym fell still, only breathing, and the distant rumble of thunder. Reed yanked his arm back, retreating through the opening. "Crazy woman," he spat, but his voice cracked. Naomi knelt, gathering the dropped phone. The screen glowed with messages. "Derek, lock the door, get footage, don't fail again." She showed the text to her students, her expression calm but grave. "This is how truth is twisted." Leah whispered, "What do we do?" Naomi looked towards the door. "We wait for light." Minutes stretched. The rain outside grew heavier, battering the gym's roof like a drum. Then, sirens. Blue and red flashed through the narrow windows. A shout, "Police! Step back!" The lock clicked. The door burst open. 2 officers entered, flashlights sweeping the room. Naomi raised her hands, palms open. "We're safe," she said quickly. "They tried to trap and film us." An officer retrieved the phones from the floor. On screen, group messages glowed, proof of intent, threads of manipulation. Reed and Miles stood frozen in the hall, faces drained. Derek was nowhere in sight. The officers led the boys away, voices firm. Leah and Finn clung to each other, shaking but unhurt. Naomi's heart hammered, but her voice stayed calm. "You see?" she told them softly. "Fear survives only if we feed it." As the police lights faded, quiet filled the gym once more. Students gathered close, a small circle of warmth in the echoing dark. Leah whispered, They won't stop, will they? Naomi met her gaze. No, but neither will we. Later that night, after the reports and questions, Naomi returned to her apartment. Her wet hair clung to her shoulders. She hung her cardigan on the chair, still torn, still stained. She sat, staring at the rain streaking her window. Outside, the world was washed clean. Inside, her resolve sharpened. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Message short and chilling. You only won a round. The final one will erase you. Naomi closed her eyes, breathing through the pulse of fear. She whispered to herself, then let them come. I'll stand. Across town, Derek sat in the dark of his room, hands shaking over his keyboard. The chat with Reed and Miles scrolled in silence. Police had taken their phones. Rumors now spread faster than control. His reflection in the monitor looked back, eyes rimmed red, pride cracked. His father's voice echoed from the next room, sharp and furious. This ends now, Derek. Do you hear me? But Derek couldn't answer. For the first time, the victory he'd chased tasted like ash. Morning came pale and cold. Headlines bloomed online. Students confessed to scheme. Viral video under investigation. Teacher targeted in framing plot. Naomi read them quietly, sipping bitter coffee. Her name still tangled in controversy, but truth now flickered at the edges. The phone rang. Mara Ellis. The board called an emergency meeting, she said. Tomorrow, public session. They'll want answers. Naomi exhaled. Then I'll give them truth. Theo's article went live by noon. Photos, statements, screenshots. The tide began to shift. Parents commented. Students shared. For the first time, her defenders outnumbered her accusers. But she knew power never yielded easily. That evening, she walked the quiet halls of Milbourne Secondary. Her footsteps echoed like memory. At her old classroom door, the black graffiti was gone, scrubbed clean overnight. Someone had taped a small note in its place. We believe you. Naomi held it gently, eyes stinging. Then she turned toward the auditorium, where tomorrow's hearing would decide her fate. Outside, storm clouds gathered once more, rolling like distant drums. She stood beneath the fading sky, wind tugging at her coat, and whispered, "This ends with light." But in the shadows near the parking lot, a dark car idled, engine low, windows tinted. Inside, Thomas Vale watched her silhouette through the rain. His hand clenched around the steering wheel. They think she's winning, he muttered. Not yet. The car rolled forward slowly, headlights cutting through the mist. Naomi didn't see it. She walked on, steady and unaware, toward a confrontation waiting beyond dawn. The storm had not passed. It was gathering strength. The morning of the hearing dawned cold and brittle. Gray clouds pressed low over Milbourne, and the air carried a quiet tension, as if the whole town was holding its breath. Inside the school auditorium, rows of chairs filled quickly. Parents in heavy coats, teachers whispering behind programs, students craning for a glimpse of the woman at the center of it all. At the front, a banner hung across the stage. Milbourne School Board. Special session. Conduct review. Under it sat the panel. 7 members in stiff suits, papers stacked before them. When Naomi Carter walked in, the murmurs swelled. She wore a simple black jacket. Her torn cardigan, cleaned and carefully mended, was folded over her arm, a quiet emblem of everything that had happened. She took her seat beside Mara Ellis, calm but unyielding. Across the aisle, Thomas Vale sat rigid, his face pale beneath the auditorium lights. At his side, Derek kept his eyes fixed on the floor, shoulders drawn tight. Reporters lined the back wall, cameras poised. The air buzzed with anticipation. The chairperson struck the gavel. This hearing will review the conduct of Ms. Naomi Carter during the cafeteria incident and subsequent allegations. Thomas rose first, voice smooth but edged with steel. Milbourne's reputation is under siege. We cannot condone violence by our educators. The evidence speaks for itself. He held up printed stills. Naomi mid-motion, her hand gripping a student's wrist. Gasps rippled through the room. Mara stood slowly. "Those images are fragments," she said, her voice measured. "Let's show the whole story." Theo Grant dimmed the lights and projected the unedited footage on the screen. The cafeteria came alive. Laughter, jeers, the flash of spilled food, the rip of fabric. Then Naomi's calm defense, the pivot, the applause. The silence that followed was heavy. Parents shifted in their seats. Even the board members leaned closer, faces unreadable. Mara's voice cut through the hush. This was not aggression. This was survival. The chairperson nodded once. "Proceed." Thomas's jaw tightened. "That may be, but the second incident, videos of her attacking students in the gym, proves instability." Mara stepped forward again. "Those videos were doctored." She handed over a folder. Metadata, transcripts, police reports. 2 students confessed under investigation. Evidence shows a deliberate plot to frame Ms. Carter. Whispers surged through the crowd. From the panel, a woman leaned forward. "And the new allegations from her former school?" Theo displayed side-by-side images, the cropped smear and the full photo. Naomi comforting a grieving child beside 2 other staff members. Mara's tone sharpened. Compassion twisted into scandal. That's the real violence here. Thomas slammed a hand against the table. "You're destroying my family's name." But before he could continue, another voice rose, quiet but clear. "I did that," Derek said. Every head turned. He stood slowly, trembling, eyes wet. "I lied. I edited the videos. I told Reed and Miles to trap her. I thought, if I humiliated her, no one would see how small I really felt." Gasps swept the room. Thomas half rose, face drained. "Derek, no." Derek's voice cracked. "You told me to fight for control, but all I learned was fear." He turned to Naomi, voice shaking. "I'm sorry. You didn't deserve any of it." Naomi's eyes softened, but she didn't speak. The chairperson tapped the gavel for silence. "Mr. Vale, your statement will be entered into record." Thomas slumped back, fury simmering behind his silence. Mara stepped forward one last time. "Truth has spoken. What happens next defines this school." The panel conferred in low murmurs. Minutes stretched like hours. Finally, the chairperson rose. "Effective immediately. Naomi Carter's suspension is lifted. All allegations are dismissed. Furthermore, this board accepts the proposed reforms: transparency, anti-bullying initiatives, and student-led safety programs." Applause erupted, hesitant at first, then rising, fierce and full. Leah clapped through tears. Finn grinned wide, relief breaking across his face. Even some teachers joined, voices trembling. Naomi stood slowly, eyes shimmering but steady. She inclined her head toward the board. "Thank you," the chairperson continued, voice grave. "An independent review will also investigate misuse of funds under Board Chairman Thomas Vale." The room exploded into shocked murmurs. Thomas rose, face red, shouting, "This is a witch hunt!" But the words drowned under the wave of noise. Naomi looked toward Derek. Their eyes met, his full of shame, hers of tempered grace. "Apologies matter," she said quietly, "but change matters more." He nodded once, tears sliding down. The hearing adjourned amid flashing cameras and swirling voices. Outside, the sky split with light, sun breaking through gray after days of rain. Naomi stepped into it, air crisp against her skin. Reporters called her name, microphones thrust forward. She answered none. Some truths didn't need sound. They lived in action. Leah and Finn joined her on the steps. "We did it," Finn whispered. Naomi glanced up at the sky. "Not yet. We've only opened the door." Across the street, Thomas Vale stood beside his car, phone pressed tight to his ear. His voice was low, clipped. "I want every trace buried, now." Behind him, Derek watched in silence, a storm of regret shadowing his face. That night, the town hummed with talk. News outlets aired the full video, headlines flashing. "Justice at Milbourne. Teacher cleared, truth revealed." Social feeds flooded with support. Messages of apology, admiration, hope. But in Naomi's apartment, quiet settled heavy. She sat by the window, cardigan draped across her knees, eyes tracing the stitched seam. The victory felt fragile. For every truth exposed, another shadow lingered. Power did not vanish. It hid, waiting. Her phone buzzed again. A new message. No name, no signature. Only 5 words. "You've made the wrong enemy." Naomi stared at the screen, her reflection caught in the glow. Outside, the wind rose again, bending the streetlights in a slow sway. She turned off the phone, laid it face down beside her, then whispered to the darkness, "I've faced worse." The cardigan rested warm in her hands, once a mark of shame, now a banner of resolve. She folded it neatly, placed it on the chair, and looked to the window. In the glass, her reflection stood taller. Not a target, a symbol. The fight was not over, but for the first time the truth had a voice, and it would not be silenced again. Sunlight spilled over Milbourne Secondary for the first time in weeks. The air felt lighter, as though the storm that had shadowed the school had finally broken. Yet, beneath the calm, echoes of what had been still lingered, rumors fading, truths taking root. Naomi Carter walked through the front gates with steady steps. Students paused mid-conversation. Some smiled. Some looked away, ashamed. But no one mocked. No one laughed. The hallways, once filled with whispers, now carried a different hum. Quieter, thoughtful. On the notice board hung a new banner. Confidence and Care Club, open enrollment. Below it, a list of names already filled half the page. Naomi paused, tracing the handwritten signatures. Leah's, Finn's, others she'd once seen hiding behind lowered eyes. Now they stood forward. In the teacher's lounge, silence met her entrance. Then, one by one, her colleagues nodded, a quiet recognition. Not applause, not pity, respect earned the hard way. Mr. Camden rose from his chair. "Welcome back, Naomi," he said softly. "This place needed a reckoning. You gave it one." She smiled faintly. "We all did." But not everyone shared the relief. Across town, Thomas Vale sat in his dim study, blinds drawn against the sun. Stacks of documents lay scattered. Financial records, board memos, half-burned evidence of the empire he'd built. The investigation had begun, and with it, his power crumbled piece by piece. On his desk, a headline glared up at him. Funding misuse linked to board chair. Below it, his own photo, grim, exposed. He poured a glass of whiskey, hands unsteady. "They've taken everything," he muttered. His phone buzzed, another call from the district office. He ignored it. In the silence, a thought hardened like ice. If they destroy me, I'll take her down with me. At Millbourne, the day moved with cautious hope. During lunch, the gym filled with the first official meeting of the Confidence and Care Club. Nearly 20 students gathered on the mats, their faces a mix of nervousness and pride. Naomi stood at the center, cardigan sleeves rolled, voice calm. "Strength begins in stillness," she said. "Courage begins in choice." She led them through breathing, balance, words of affirmation. Not combat, not defiance, but the quiet confidence to stand when fear whispered. Leah practiced beside Finn, their movements steady, synchronized. Laughter rose, genuine, unforced. For the first time, the gym echoed with something new: belonging. When the session ended, Naomi sat with them in a circle. "Why are you here?" she asked. A boy spoke first. "Because I'm tired of pretending I'm fine." A girl followed. "Because I don't want to be invisible anymore." Then Leah. "Because she made us believe we could be safe." Naomi's chest tightened. "You made yourselves safe," she corrected softly. Her voice wavered, but her eyes shone. "I only held the door open." Later that afternoon, as classes ended, she lingered in the courtyard. Sunlight caught the repaired seam of her cardigan, turning the stitches into silver threads. It no longer felt like a scar. It was a badge, proof of survival. From across the yard, Derek Vale approached, shoulders slumped, hands buried in his jacket pockets. Students watched as he neared, whispers rippling like wind through grass. He stopped a few feet away, voice low. "I wanted to say it again. I'm sorry." Naomi studied his face. No arrogance, no mask, only a weary sincerity. "What do you want now, Derek?" He swallowed. "To fix what I broke, however I can." Silence hung between them. The boy, who once ruled through fear, now stood uncertain, stripped of power. And in his eyes she saw something rare: humility. "Then start here," she said gently. "Join the club. Speak the truth. Teach others what you've learned." He blinked. "You'd trust me with that?" "I trust growth," she replied, "even when it begins in shame." His gaze dropped. "I don't deserve it." "No one earns redemption in words," Naomi said. "Only in actions." He nodded slowly, a spark of resolve lighting behind his regret. As he turned to leave, Leah approached Naomi, eyes wide. "You really believe he can change?" Naomi looked after him, her voice quiet but sure. "I have to, or everything we fought for means nothing." That night, the local paper released a new story. Board chair under investigation. Financial irregularities confirmed. Thomas Vale's photo filled the front page again, shadowed and grim. At her apartment, Naomi read it in silence. Justice was moving, slow but certain. Yet she knew storms never ended cleanly. They left debris, scars, questions. Her phone rang. Mara Ellis. "The county office is calling for a full audit," Mara said. "Thomas won't survive this." Naomi closed her eyes, exhaling. "Then maybe Millbourne can finally heal." But before they ended the call, Mara's tone shifted. "Naomi, be careful. Cornered men lash out." Outside, wind rose again, rattling the window pane. Across town, Thomas sat in his darkened living room, the whiskey glass untouched now. A single photograph lay before him, Derek as a child, smiling beside a younger version of himself. He stared at it until his vision blurred. "You were supposed to inherit strength," he whispered. Not shame. He reached for his phone, thumb hovering over a new message. The words came slow, deliberate. This isn't over. She'll pay. But before sending, his hand trembled. For the first time, doubt crept in. Was he fighting for pride or against truth? He deleted the message, stared into the dark, and said nothing. The next day, Naomi returned to her classroom. Sunlight poured through clean windows. On her desk lay a single white envelope. No name, no sender. She opened it carefully. Inside, a folded page with 4 words in bold ink. You can't save him. Her pulse quickened. She looked toward the door, empty hallway, silent walls. The note trembled in her hand. Was it warning or threat? She slipped it into her bag, breathing slow, steady. Fear rose like smoke, but beneath it burned certainty. She whispered to herself, I'll try anyway. Through the window, she saw Derek standing alone by the courtyard fountain, staring at his reflection. The boy who once wielded fear now looked like someone trying to find who he was without it. Naomi turned back to the empty room, her voice firm. Every shadow ends in light. But somewhere beyond the school's gates, unseen eyes watched. The battle was not finished. Redemption would come with a price. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of rain again. The final storm was on its way. The last day of the term arrived wrapped in gold. Sunlight spilled through the high windows of Milbourne Secondary, painting the halls with warmth that felt almost new. The tension that once clung to every corner had thinned, replaced by something lighter, watchfulness, hope. In the auditorium, rows of chairs gleamed beneath banners, end of term ceremony, a new chapter. Students filed in, voices hushed, as if aware they were stepping into history. At the front of the stage, behind a white cloth, stood a glass case. Inside lay Naomi Carter's cardigan, torn once in humiliation, now carefully mended, framed like a relic, the symbol of everything they had survived. Naomi waited backstage, palms resting on the folded speech in her hands. Her heart was steady, her breath calm. She no longer needed to prove her strength. It spoke for itself now, in the eyes of those who once doubted. Leah appeared beside her, beaming. They're all waiting for you. Naomi smiled. Then let's not keep them. When she stepped onto the stage, the hall erupted in applause. It wasn't the wild cheer of spectacle. It was the sound of gratitude, of recognition earned. She stood at the podium, the light soft against her face, and waited until silence returned. When I first came to Milbourne, she began, I only wanted to teach. But this place taught me something too, that kindness is often mistaken for weakness, that silence can be a wound, and that sometimes to protect peace, you must stand in its defense. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, students leaning forward, parents nodding slowly. I was humiliated in front of you all, she continued, voice firm. But that moment didn't break me. It became a beginning. Every tear, every lie, every whisper, each one carved the truth deeper, until it could no longer be hidden. She paused, eyes sweeping across the hall. Faces once cold, now softened. Respect cannot be demanded. It must be earned, and justice doesn't come easily, but it comes, for those who refuse to stop believing. Applause thundered through the auditorium. Some students rose to their feet, clapping through tears. Naomi stepped aside, gesturing to the covered glass case. Leah and Finn crossed the stage, pulling the cloth away. Gasps filled the hall. The cardigan shimmered beneath the lights, each repaired stitch catching gold. This, Naomi said, is not a mark of shame. It is proof that strength can rise from ruin, that dignity, once torn, can be restored stronger than before. The crowd stood as one. Even teachers who had doubted her wiped their eyes. From the back row, Derek Vale watched silently. He wore no jacket, no swagger, only humility. When Naomi's gaze found him, he rose, walking slowly to the stage. He turned to the audience, voice trembling. I was the one who tore it. I thought fear made me powerful. But all it made me was small. Miss Carter showed me what strength really is, standing for truth, even when no one stands with you. The hall held its breath. Thomas Vale sat in the corner, pale and distant. The investigation had stripped his title, his influence. He looked at his son now with something fragile in his eyes. Sorrow, maybe pride, maybe both. Naomi placed a hand gently on Derek's shoulder. Redemption begins with honesty, she said. You've taken the first step. Now help build the future. He nodded, tears shining. The principal stepped forward next. From today, he announced, Ms. Carter will lead the Confidence and Care program across the district. Millbourne will be our first model school. Applause surged again, louder, freer. Naomi bowed her head, humbled. After the ceremony, the courtyard filled with sunlight and laughter. Students gathered around the glass case, taking photos, tracing the stitches through the glass. It no longer told a story of shame, but of victory. Leah hugged Naomi tight. You changed everything. Naomi smiled softly. No, Leah. We did. Across the yard, Derek approached his father. Thomas stood rigid, a man stripped of armor. I wanted to make you proud, Derek said quietly. Thomas's voice cracked. And now you have, by being better than me. They stood in silence, years of unspoken pressure loosening between them. As the sun dipped low, Naomi lingered alone in the courtyard. The air smelled of grass and chalk dust, the quiet hum of a place reborn. She watched students scatter, their laughter carrying down the halls once haunted by fear. This was what she had fought for, not glory, not revenge, but the chance for them to walk unafraid. Her phone buzzed. A new message. From a number she recognized now, Thomas Vale. It read, I was wrong. Thank you for showing my son what I couldn't. Naomi stared at the screen, then typed a single reply. Everyone deserves a second chance. She slipped the phone into her pocket, eyes lifting to the horizon. The sky burned amber, clouds glowing like embers after a long fire. The storm had passed. Inside the school, the cardigan rested beneath glass, stitched, scarred, and beautiful. Students passed it with reverence, whispering its story. Not of shame, of courage. That evening, Naomi returned to her apartment. She brewed tea, opened the window, and let the cool breeze in. The room felt lighter, as though the walls themselves had exhaled. On her desk lay a notebook, the beginnings of a new program, plans for workshops, letters from students. Beside it, her suspension letter, folded and tucked under a smooth stone, a relic of what was overcome. She picked up her pen, wrote across a fresh page. Kindness is not weakness. It is the courage to stay gentle in a world that tests every edge. Her hand paused, eyes lifting toward the night. In the reflection of the window, she saw herself, not as the teacher who was mocked, not the woman they tried to erase, but the one who turned pain into purpose. Outside, Millbourne glowed with the streetlights. In the distance, laughter echoed from the park. Light, unburdened. Naomi closed her notebook and whispered to the quiet, We made it. She touched the seam of her sleeve, the stitches smooth beneath her fingers. A reminder, a promise. Tomorrow would bring new battles, new tests, but she no longer feared them. Because now she knew. Respect must be earned. Truth must be fought for. And strength can rise even from the smallest, quietest heart. The wind stirred the curtains, carrying with it the sound of distant bells. Naomi smiled, eyes glinting with calm fire. The storm was over. The story was not.